And my name is Chase Starnes, and we're going to be talking about in our presentation today about good practices that help India. Um, so a little bit about India's history. This is a long and vast one, but I really wanted to stick to in the last 50 years, and just around that time is when India gained independence from Britain. It was in 1947, August 15th, so right around the World War II era. One of the bigger conflicts that they had at the very beginning was with China in 1959, when China invaded Aksai Chin Plateau. It came to a shock for a lot of those in India because they had somewhat of an agreement together, and China kind of did this out of nowhere to them. One of the bigger transition periods for them was when they decided that they wanted to move away from the English language and start to transition into one of their own languages. And they did it for around 15 years, slowly integrating and taking out English over time. A little bit of the political landscape over the last 50 years. The Nehru-Gandhi dynasty. Indira Gandhi gained power in 1980 until her assassination in 1984. She was seen as someone who they were seen as someone who was very, very kind of power hungry, and she was assassinated by the Sikhs in 1984. Her son, Rajiv Gandhi, took over the dynasty, or what was called the prime minister at the time, and this was because there were a lot of other state officials and other leaders that gained power through familial ties. There was a lot of political violence that went through in the past 50 years. Like I said, the Sikhs killed her and assassinated her in 1984. And the government just continuously failed to balance democracy and central control throughout the region. There was a lot of religious influence as well. Hindus believed in karma, and it shaped their societal and political norms. A lot of times they kind of did things under the table in order to gain good karma. There were a lot of politics intertwined with religious norms. Pluralism allowed a lot of diversity, but it also created challenges in their governing. A few bridges to the gospel that we looked at was righteousness, something that the Hindu religion went through, is that their own righteousness is what gave them got them into heaven and enlightenment. In Ephesians 2:8 through 9 is a great point to look at for a bridge to the gospel. It isn't our own doing that saved us, but through Christ, is just a small gist of what Ephesians says. And they don't have to worry about their own works because God already paid the ultimate price. They don't have to worry about being good, but they can look to Jesus and see that He is good for us and makes us good through that. Peace in place of fear. This is something that is also seen in a lot of Muslims that come to Christ, and having peace, that when they ask Christ into their heart, they are made new. The Hindu and Muslim people, they kind of all throughout their life don't know if they're going to heaven or not, and they just hope that what they've done is good enough. And to the next point, it doesn't bank on maybe or what if. So when they ask Jesus into their heart, there is no maybe. They get in, but they will if they believe. And through Jesus being the Prince of Peace, he gives us peace through all circumstances. And this is something that I learned from a man named Ahmed, who said that it was Jesus that gave him peace when he asked him into his heart. And Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything be by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus."
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the health needs. Rising trends in non-communicable diseases like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer are a really big problem in places like India, because there's they just have less food and less resources, and it kind of amplifies these diseases that they have. There's also a shortage of healthcare workers. About 20.6 doctors and nurses and midwives per 10,000 people. And the World Health Organization actually, I think, recommends 40 or 42, somewhere in there. So they're under half the recommended amount of doctors needed. And then mental health is a big need in India too. A lot of times in struggling countries, mental health is one of the last things seen. But with all the like caste system, people being higher up and lower, and then karma, and just a bunch of natural disasters, there can be a lot of mental health things that go into this. And the economic needs. High economic inequality. 12.9% of Indian population lives on less than $1.90 per day. And if you think about in America, there's not much you could buy for a meal for $1.90 per day. So this is pretty crazy. And then job insecurity in rural populations and marginalized communities. They struggle with keeping a job, or just having the opportunity to get a job. Many of these places, they don't have a lot of well-paying jobs, and so it's a challenge to pay for their family, to provide for their family. And then economic crisis leading up to a significant rise in jobs and less jobs, severely affected families. So anytime there's an economic crisis, a war, or like I said, natural disasters, it kind of makes room for less jobs, and so plunging a lot of less fortunate people deeper into poverty. And then the education needs. Many children can't go to school because of financial issues that force them to work to support their family. So a lot of families, a lot of children in India and other countries, their parents are working, and they're working so hard to provide for their family. But like I said, most are living on $1.90 per day, and so they're working with their family and working a job to be able to provide for the rest of their family, and a lot of them don't get to go to school because of this reason. And then during COVID-19, this kind of worsened the education gaps, with 60% of them lacking internet in India. So like a lot of us went through COVID and had to go on to online school, and in places like India where they didn't have computers or certain technology or internet, it was a pretty big challenge to be able to stay online, to be able to stay um, learning. And so schools being unaffected created a space with under-equipped teachers and a lack of learning materials. So they just, being underfunded kind of makes it challenging to find good teachers and makes it even more challenging to get learning materials. A lot of them don't even have their own learning materials. They have the materials that the school owns, and so they kind of have to get together in groups to learn. And the environmental needs. Lack of clean water with many resources begin being contaminated with bacteria, pollution, and waste. A good example of this is a place called the Ganges River. So the Ganges River is one of the most polluted rivers in the world. It's used by a lot of Hindus. It's a very sacred river. I think a lot of temples go through there, and it's used for religious rituals. Another big cause is deforestation. It leads to a massive loss of resources because the locals use the habitat of the forest to survive. A lot of the animals and trees and plants they use to feed their families, and when deforestation happens, these resources go away. And then the social needs for women and children. Women lack the opportunity to work facing discrimination. So a lot of times in India, women are kind of left at home to take care of the kids and take care of the family, and they don't have the opportunity to go to work or study or things like that because that's just the kind of culture it is. Also, there's high rates of teen pregnancies due to cultural and economic factors. So a lot of times fathers will try to marry off their daughters to have somebody to provide for their daughter so that she can continue to survive. And so women's rights are limited because of transportation, lowering their standing socially. Traditions. Women's rights are limited because of traditions that lower their standing socially. So that's like the religions.
A few Christian organizations doing work in India are Convoy of Hope, the Stone Table, and a few others. But specifically Convoy of Hope, they are a humanitarian organization that focuses on holistic development and disaster relief. They are one of the leading organizations that do that. They go to a lot of tornadoes and hurricanes, or if there's a really, really underdeveloped place, they'll help them and then leave when they can sustain it. They implement training programs to increase and sustain productivity. They reduce reliance on outside aid with equipping families with skills such as farming. And they partner with local churches to strengthen communities worldwide. The Stone Table is a Christian nonprofit org that helps global workers through business. They establish business that provide essential services and meet community needs. It also creates jobs for the local people, which boosts economic growth for them. Partners with local business owners to strengthen the overall community as well. Something about holistic development in other countries. It should help with physical and the spiritual needs. Many global workers do business as missions. Faith-based development strategies. Two big points that we wanted to focus on were community and economic and employment benefits. The strategy of launching a coffee shop in India is what we really wanted to focus on. It could be a hub for economic growth and community outreach. It provides welcoming space for meetings, relaxation, and social interaction. and locally source ingredients to support regional agriculture. We also believe that it should be Christ-centered leadership to share through service. Economic and employment benefits include a coffee shop that generates profit to sustain itself and even invest in the community around it. It will also empower local workers to provide for families, and it equips workers with tools to start their own businesses in the future. We have a vision. The vision for long-term impact really looks towards a place where there's love, service, and transformation, and even when there's somebody who's alone, they would feel love, and they would be served just as well as anybody else. The employees and customers should feel the presence of God in the interactions that they have at these coffee shops. The workers are faith-based and trained to ultimately leave and start their own businesses. We dream of launching 15 plus, having 15 plus workers eventually own their own business in other communities in need. And it also would address economic and spiritual needs across multiple regions. As a conclusion, we want to help others become sustainable in their own context. Through faith and business, help the community grow past living and into thriving. Thank you.
Thank you.